So one of the big issues were cybersecurity at that point was a buzzword. It was more considered a fad. And, it's something, yeah, that's there, but it's for the techies, not for us. So it hadn't, that whole governance mechanism, the COVID framework, people just did not pay attention to that at all. And especially at that time, it was more audit focused. It was IT audit. It was called computer auditing or something like that. And it was the hardest part was trying to get buy-in from senior management and saying that this is something that we will have to deal with, not only from a governance perspective, but also the impact it has on your daily operations. So I think we've come a long way from there, and obviously it's evolved both in a positive direction in the sense of the efficiency it's brought to the operation, but also the bad actors that have come into play that did not really exist. I mean, external threats was not a big deal. People wouldn't pay attention to that at all, saying, hey, it hasn't happened in the last 30 years. Why would I be concerned about that? And now it's all over, in terms of the bad actors having so much control over the damage that they can do to the organization. Yeah, so as I mentioned, I was the first webmaster, and after that, I became the treasurer and then the president. So the communication channel was very new, communicating to the members in terms of not sending letters or email. Email was pretty basic even at that time, but the web was a completely new form of communication, and to reach out, make sure that the website was current, and people were going to the communication to get their communication from. I think that was a big deal at that time, and we, as the president, obviously we were trying to expand our membership, and Washington D.C. was a very big chapter even at that time, because of the federal government presence. I think after New York, that was the largest chapter in the U.S. So just trying to gain the confidence of people that this is a new discipline that you really need to pay attention to, and but focus as a complement to the traditional auditing techniques. So I think that was a big emphasis. Right. So at that time, it was more paper-based, doing IT audits. You had a IT audit program, you would execute it, you would write a report, but there wasn't, in terms of the data analytics part of it was just starting out. And so that was our emphasis, was move away from the paper-based analysis, for example, looking at a printed copy of the mainframe security parameters, but how do you actually get into the mainframe, download that data, and do it more on real time using data analytics? That was something that was very new at that point, in its very infancy. So what we tried to do was have more of those, focus more on those technologies that could help you with the IT controls aspect of it. Like I said, it was a new discipline. So getting people on board to understand where this was going was difficult. But what helped us was the GAO had a big presence in the IT audit world, and they were promoting the IT audit aspect of it. And in fact, we had two past presidents, John Lanehart for the ISACA International, as well as Michael Donahue, and both of them were from the GAO, and they actively promoted this new concept. So not only this wasn't something that was localized to Washington, D.C., but we were getting a lot of support from ISACA International in terms of the coordination of the research that they were doing. And that was global at that time. There was a lot of stuff that was going on in Europe, Japan, and how do you leverage those kind of developments to what was happening in the U.S. So that was a big it was a big movement at that time. So during my presidency, there was I'm happy to report there was a pretty significant increase in the membership. And so I don't remember the exact statistics, but I think we were growing almost 15 to 20% every year. And that continued during the presidency, and was an indication of the, people were realizing that this was the next an extension of the traditional auditing techniques, and it was more audit focused. Now, of course, it's much more than audit, but as a complement to the traditional auditing techniques, people saw a lot of advantage in that. So they were joining ISACA at a fairly steady clip. Yeah, at that time, most of the applications were mainframe based, and they were just moving to what was called the client server aspect of running your operations. So there was a big switch in terms of not only did you have a lot of applications that were running on the mainframe, but what is the control environment of this new environment, which is the client server network based. And they were obviously in its infancy at that time, but what are the controls that one needs to be worried about? That was something very new. So we were, at that point in time, we were in a transition mode in terms of the changes in the control environment. Yeah, I think the most important thing is that this is a lifelong journey in terms of training. And so it's not something at that point in time, it was like, okay, if you have your CPA, maybe you should get a CISA and you're all set. And but I don't think that it would have worked for a few years at that point in time. But even then, with the rapid advance of technology, you have to keep up with on an annual basis. So, and even more so now, what's current now is, and as vogue today may not be applicable next year. So, the transition has become very rapid. And so you can't really rest on your laurels and say, okay, I'm done training and I don't want to be trained anymore. It's a constant evolution of technology that you have to keep up with. Well, it has to a lot influenced my career in the sense that as I progressed through the the hierarchy of the organization that I was in, the IT controls, the frameworks, the cybersecurity aspects of it became more and more important. And one of the big challenges you have is trying to convince senior management that this is really important for your day-to-day operations as well as your future strategy. And so having that background, which my peers did not necessarily have, it was a big advantage to me to explain to, I reported to an independent board, to explain to them what those challenges were and what the risks were in terms of linking IT controls with enterprise risk management, and how do you bake that process into it. I think that's one of the big the value that I brought to the organizations.